We're going to look at setting financial goals, which is step 2 of budgeting your best life, this budget system that I've created. So you'll have already done step 1, and that's the financial health check. And the outcome of the financial health checks will depend, or will determine, I should say, your financial goals. So if you have a negative magic number, this would suggest to me that you have expenses which are greater than your income. So in that situation, you would need to start looking at ways to cut your costs. Um, it may be that you've got extensive credit card debt and you might want to have a financial goal which says pay off credit cards. Whatever the outcome of your financial health check, this will determine what your financial goals are. So in this example here, this is an extract from the budget planner. I include this page in the budget planner at the front, and I give you the opportunity to put 5 financial goals, which is quite a lot, really. I think 5 might be a bit much, but I tend to stick to 1 or 2 financial goals. It means that it's easier to manage, and you can review 2 financial goals way easier than if you set 4 or 5. So in this example, I've set myself the first financial goal being I want to pay off my credit card. Now, just to say that on its own is a little bit vague, so you need to add some substance to it. So I've said I have debt of £5,000 and I want to pay it off in 2 years. So that's giving a specific amount of debt that I want to pay off, and it's also being specific about the time frame, being 2 years. So in that situation, what I would do is I would take the £5,000 or however much your debt was and divide the £5,000 by the number of months that you are going to pay it off in, and that will give you a monthly payment amount. And what I would then do is set up a standing order with my bank and pay off that set amount each month and just let it pay off automatically. So the second financial goal I've set here is I've said I want to build an emergency fund of £3,000 by the 31st of December 2021. So that's a year from now at the time this video has been recorded. So it's given, I've given it a specific amount, and I've also given it a specific time frame. Now, you might think to yourself it's a bit odd trying to save money and pay off credit card debt at the same time. There's a school of thought that suggests that you should simply pay your credit card debt off first because interest rates tend to be high on them, and then start saving money. But I don't like to do that. I prefer to do both. One reason is because you get a really good feeling when you do start to save money, and it compensates for the bad feeling about having debt, essentially. So what I prefer to do is save up a little bit of money in an emergency fund. A minimum would be, say, £1,000. That would be a useful amount to save. I've set this at £3,000 because I know that for me it was achievable. But you have to set what's reasonable for you in your personal circumstances. So put the amount that you feel is a reasonable amount to save, and then start just paying a little bit per month into an emergency fund, into a separate bank account, one that preferably you don't touch, so it just builds up. And what that will do is it will give you a positive feeling. It's a bit of a mood booster to be able to see that balance gradually increasing. And as long as you're trying to pay off your debt at the same time, you're working on both. So it's a good way to build up your savings and pay off your debt at the same time. But what I find really important is that if, let's say you have, let's say you've got a car and you put your car in for an MOT, which you're expecting it to be costing around, I don't know, £45, something like that. And then, unfortunately, something happens in the MOT and they say, no, you've got to get your brakes sorted. So that means further cost, which you weren't expecting. Now, if you've got an emergency fund set aside, you could take the additional costs out of your emergency fund and pay off the garage with the expenditure that you've got to pay on the car. If you haven't got an emergency fund, the chances are you might well use your credit card, and I really don't want you to do that, because what I'd like you to do is pay off that credit card. So it's really useful to start building up a fund just for those kind of situations that are unforeseen, and it can get you out of a sticky situation. But you've obviously got to keep replenishing that emergency fund. So keep dripping money into it as much as you can afford. What people tend to say is up to 3 months worth of spending money per month. So how much you work out, how much you would need, how much you could survive on in order to clothe, feed, keep a roof over your head, food and clothe yourself. How much would you need, absolute minimum, for a month, and then multiply that by 3. That would be the amount of an emergency fund that would be useful. Some people prefer to have 6 months worth of emergency fund. It honestly is up to you, but just to have something there to fall back on is really useful. So these are the 2 financial goals that I've set for myself, and I would review these on a monthly basis and definitely a quarterly basis, just to make sure that I was on target to do both of those goals. It's really important that you do review your goals. You don't just write them down and then forget about them. So we look at them on a monthly and quarterly basis to make sure that we can stick to them. Okay, that's step 2 of the Budgeting Your Best Life budget system.